Welcome to an evening edition of the Jamal Thomas Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I have a fantastic guest. I am joined with Theo Wilson. He was with RFK Jr. He was African American Affairs advisor to the campaign. And as I was telling them behind the scenes, I am greatly looking forward to this interview. I was very interested in RFK when RFK first came out. I thought he was a breath of fresh air. And for that matter, I thought he had the potential, if there was a fair race, to win that race, especially considering who was in the primaries. He made more sense than anybody else. He could, he was competent, which right off the bat made him higher than most of the people that was in the campaign. I was shocked by the level of vitriol, though, that they went after him with. And I'm jumping too far into it. Let's start at the beginning. How did you even meet RFK Jr.?
Right, brother. Let me tell you something. I met him because I spoke out against the mandates and the lockdowns during the COVID era. And when COVID first hit, my daughter was just born. And me as a public speaker and an educator in the lecture circuit on universities can't speak in public if there ain't no public to speak to. And so I was volunteering at this food bank because there was nothing else to do. I wanted to be near food just in case food went scarce. And the brother in charge of that, Coach Hodge, from the Struggle of Love Institute, old Chicago thug that turned his life around, he said, listen, man, if this stays locked down, we're going to have a hot summer. These boys going to be shooting. They're going to be shooting. Because there was no place for the young black kids to escape to. There was nobody to say, to tell your homies, yo, I'm not going to be on the block today. I got to go to Boys and Girls Club. I got to go to this summer job. And sure enough, we had a long, hot summer. Not only that, but a lot of the brothers who was hanging on at the bottom of the economy as barbers, as, brothers who were doing landscaping and stuff, if they don't got no income, they're right back to the streets. They're right back to trapping. And so I tried to speak out against that. And my very blue demographic that liked what I said anytime before suddenly turned against me. And when the mandates came out, I said, listen, how can you mandate needles into the arms of a people who have been medically experimented on since we got to this soil? Black folks should not be forced to comply with jab or your job. And I was very forceful. How I said I wasn't as articulate as I am right now about it. I was just going live, thugging and whatnot about this issue. But soon enough, I got RFK Jr.'s attention when he came here to Denver. And that's how it worked.
Wow. And he heard you speak and he was like, I want you on my team.
Yeah, so there was a rally against vaccine mandates in general that were closing the religious exemption loophole here in Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was George Floyd summer, bro. So it was a hot summer. On one side of the Capitol was medical freedom. On the other side of the Capitol was Black Lives Matter. It was a hot summer. Like I see my partners who was in BLM on the other side of the Capitol. I'm over here with all these conservatives like, yo, I'm actually generally over there.
Yeah.
But I saw that medical freedom is a Black lives issue. The ability to exempt ourselves, or at least to say, we're going to take natural, homeopathic routes if we choose to. It should be a choice. And there was a huge red herring that was going on, that unvaccinated kids were a threat to vaccinated kids. And I was like, bro, what Jedi mind trick are y'all under? If I've got the protection, what you worried about? If I got the vaccine, you should be able to cough in my mouth and I should be fine. You understand what I'm saying? So what's this fear about unvaccinated? Unvaccinated kids are going to infect them. Do you believe in your vaccines? It's like, if I'm having part of the crudeness of this metaphor, but if I have a vasectomy and I'm still using condoms, do I believe that my vasectomy worked or do I don't? You see what I'm saying? So, so I was pushing back against that logic. And the way I was articulating it was like, okay, have this guy talk about it. So Bobby showed up to that rally. And that I got on the Del Bigtree show over at the High Wire. And I just said, medical freedom is a Black lives issue. I'm the grandson of a Tuskegee Airman. So since my grandpa was a Tuskegee Airman, I had to learn everything about the word Tuskegee growing up. Everything about the word Tuskegee growing up. And sure enough, they was like, we want the narrative.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's super interesting. He snatched you up. You became on the campaign. Now, when you first got on the campaign, what were you doing? What was your function on the campaign when you first got there? Was it outreach? Was it planning? What was your role within the campaign?
Right. I have my finger on the pulse of what Black voters desire. Right. I wrote a program that Bobby initially pushed out there called Targeted Community Repair. And the logic was based on reparations, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it was based on the logic of if a community was intentionally targeted for harm, a community must intentionally be targeted for repair. And so it wasn't necessarily race-based, but lineage-based. And it was about understanding that there are generational ramifications for centuries of economic disenfranchisement through racial kleptocracy in this country. This is basic logic. You know what I'm saying? And so how can we have this conversation without tripping the triggers of the right about reparations and all the false narratives about deservingness and not deservingness? Yeah. And so that's what Black folks are talking about. What are Black folks talking about? I told Bobby, the fact that you were against the vaccine actually gives you credibility with Black folks because we were the most vaccine hesitant in the country based on our history. Yeah. So I was just trying to tell him how to speak to our community in a way that would attract votes. And keep this in mind. Nobody wanted the rematch between Trump and Biden. Nobody wanted that. No. And I said before, they never broke 50% popularity. They wasn't 2008 Barack Obama or 1980 Ronald Reagan. These were beatable candidates in the environment. And so I was like, yo, with your name, and if you say the right things, you can sweep the leg. If you go to the urban Black vote and you get that vote away from the Democrats before they can even figure out what to do, that entire demographic, the moral weight of the Democratic Party literally stands on the Black community. You sweep that, Bobby, you got the presidency. That was my strategy. And that didn't happen. We can talk about why.
You know what's wild, bro? Like, you're absolutely right. Like, you can look at income inequality and you could see, like, I think it was something like whites have like 100,000 wealth and Blacks are like 14,000.
Right. That's wealth inequality, right.
Astonishing. Like, you look at that, you're like, whoa, how? And you can't really attribute that to anything but the way Blacks were brought here, how we were kept out of the New Deal, how you had redlining, Jim Crow, like all of these things for hundreds of years leading up to like the 1980s. So you make a damn good point. Was he receptive to it? I mean, because, and one more thing, you're right about the Black vote, by the way. Part of the reason that they chose Joe Biden was because of the Black vote. They thought Bernie Sanders is going to take it. We need somebody to get the Black vote if we don't, you know. So was he receptive to that message of, hey, you got to get the Black vote. If that's what if you're going to win this thing, you got to take the Black vote for the Democratic Party. And this is the way to do it.
And here's where things go off the rails.
Here we are.
Bobby was receptive. The right-leaning team he had around him was not necessarily receptive. And here's what ended up happening and why Bobby didn't end up getting the Black vote that he could have. A lot of it had to do with left-wing media siloing Bobby away from them. Therefore, he could only speak on Fox. He's only on Tucker Carlson. He's only on Russell Brand and Joe Rogan. So whoever is advising Bobby at this point in the early campaign on right-leaning talking points is getting rewarded. Whoever is advising Bobby on left-leaning talking points in the campaign is getting ignored because Bobby's not paying a price for offending the left. Bobby's paying a price for offending the right. And so that's how that happened.
But it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? I mean, like,
I mean, that's just the beginning, brother. We ain't even dug into
I
that.
say that is,
Yeah.
it's like I was saying in the very beginning, the Democratic Party made a concerted effort. I've never seen the level of vitriol that was thrown at him. Even
But that's
Sanders
part of it.
didn't get
That's
that level
part
of
of it.
vitriol. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
So let's address the Democratic Party piece. The Democratic Party, if you know the human beings inside the media, they are connected deeply to the human beings inside democratic politics.
exactly.
That's it. That's how that's the literal mechanism of either left-wing or right-wing media. And so if the Democratic Party can pull strings in the media and say, I need you to paint Bobby in this light. I need you to paint him like this, I need you to paint him like that, and I need you to block him off of here. His blocking out of left-wing media was part and parcel to the vitriol you're referring to from the Democratic Party. And because of that, and I mean, it was brutal. The Democrats waged really caustic lawfare against Bobby in a way that was deeply hurtful to him. To Bobby's credit, Bobby tried to go left. He's royalty in the country. He's the spitting image of his father. He's undeniably a Kennedy in any ways. And just 3 decades ago, he was the darling of the Kennedy family when he was doing his environmental work. So they were still also in cahoots with whoever's controlling the scenes in pharma. So if pharma don't want something, and then the Democrats don't want something, that means that you don't get a chance to speak to left-leaning audiences via left-leaning media. And inside of the campaign, he's only paying a price for offending the right. He's not paying a price for offending the left because the price is paid and the narrative is set on either side of the media echo chamber. So it trickled on down inside of the camp. And eventually he was pushed right by the very vitriol you talking about, brother. That lawfare and that icing out of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I remember when he was talking about censorship and the attacks that were leveled at, like the opening statement that I forget that goofball used, that woman who's not even a Congress member. And she went, I mean, she threw in vaccine denier. She threw in, I think she said women hater. I mean, it was like just a list of everything. And he sat there shocked by it. He didn't even read his initial speech. He was like, I know you people don't believe this stuff. I know you don't believe it. And yet you're saying this stuff about me like this. Like he was, and you're looking at this like, whoa. And then if you look at like MSNBC and they are going at him left and right. Oh, he's a brain worm. He's
brain worm, all of that.
Yeah, all that stuff. And that was the rhetoric, meaning from their point of view, Democratic-leaning media, who's effectively attached to the Democratic Party, never gave him a chance because from their point of view, he is inhibiting Joe Biden. He is getting in the way of somebody, meaning he has a chance of winning this thing, and we don't want him to have a chance of winning this thing. So, here's his family members who are saying bad things about him. Like they went hard.
Yeah, right. Folks underestimate how large the Kennedy family is. Yeah. There are hundreds of them. And so you can find anybody who got beef with him for any reason within his own bloodline. And then you find people who love him. And I know that when I went to Kennedy events and rallies, there were definitely Kennedys there because they all got that same face, man. You know, all them Kennedys got that face that looked like it came right off a coin. You know what I mean? All them faces are on coins. So it's like, you're like, God, like, and it's surreal when you in the presence of one of them, like, damn, that facial feature is something that I went to school seeing every documentary about history. So it's like, they're there. The Kennedys were very present. It was Kennedys and Shrivers. It's just about which side of your family, the media wants to interview. That was the most important part. So, yeah.
Wow. So they effectively locked him out of left-wing media.
Man.
So the standpoint of right-wing media is like, okay, well, the right wing will definitely take him on.
Right.
But the moment that you go to right-wing media, when you say something off the rails, okay, well, we don't like the fact that you said that because it's trending to the left. But the left is not accepting it. It's from a media standpoint. What about independent media. I mean, from my understanding, he said he was going to have a campaign of basically going through independent media because big media is ebbing away. That like YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, these type of media organizations have much more power in the country. What about going that route? That wasn't something that he wanted to do to try to get left-wing
Right.
media.
Two things. Number one, independent media is not as independent as it seems. They still code either right or left, and right-leaning independent media is far larger than left-leaning independent media, and that is because of their funding sources, not because of the populace's desires. The second thing is true independent down the center media was offended by his Israel positions. And those folks, the folks who truly were in the middle, the folks who truly desired to throw a spear into the gears of the two-party system like I did, when the Israel October 7th situation happened, and by the way, that was the same weekend he declared independence. It was like a divine hand giving him an opportunity. We could talk about that. But he had previously been in trouble for statements that he made about Ashkenazi Jews not being vulnerable to COVID-19 and things like that. So he was already, because of his prior fumble, whoever these people are, got his hooks in him. And then when October 7th cracked off, I was like, oh my God, Bobby, please don't post nothing crazy on Twitter. He posted something crazy on Twitter. I was like, ah. And so it was just like, and then people understood how initially you could be pro-Israel as hell. People understood that with the grotesque reports that were coming out, that who could be on Hamas's side at this point? Me, somebody who had been sympathetic to Palestine ever since I knew about the conflict, I was like, God damn, Hamas, like you really reckoning for your boy out here trying to advocate for you, all right? But then when Benjamin Netanyahu went George W. Bush and terrorized, and all this media starts coming out with Israeli like citizens speaking in a way that is unabashedly genocidal.
Yes.
Independent media, the real independent center media saw that and was like, Bobby, do you also see this? Like if we say that these dead children should not be dead, we know that there's about to be way more dead children over here. Can you say that? Can you throw us a freaking bone? And that's what lost true independent media and pushed them right.
I will tell you, I was super interested in Kennedy when he first came out.
Right.
I understood his vaccine position, even though they say he was vaccine denier. I didn't take it as a vaccine denier. From my point of view, he was a lawyer who was going after law firms. And so he was very skeptical of drug companies, which he should have been. And as a lefty, I'm like, yeah, I'm skeptical of companies too. I get his point of view, right?
Hello.
Even the anti-war stuff, like when he would say, when he would explain the Ukraine issue, and I'm like, thank you. Somebody's been honest about this issue, right? But then, to me, it was a complete contradiction in terms. He would say, we need to talk to our enemies. We need to have this conversation. And then Israel goes on a murder spree, and his response is, well, Palestinians are the most pampered people in the world. The poorest people on the planet, who is in a concentration, basically an open air ghetto on one side and an apartheid state on the other. And he's like, they're so pampered. They're being starved to death. Even by the US government's own appraisal, they're being starved to death. And he's like, they're pampered.
And that,
like, okay, this is outrageous.
And that, so I spoke to him about it. Just know, everything you're saying, I said to him. Bobby and I went back and forth for days. I would argue with this man on text, and I would wake up to like a screed of text from Bobby. You know what I'm saying? Like I would wake up to this. We would be in meetings, and when I would be around him, I pull him aside. I said, Bobby, this is very serious right now.
Yeah.
Because we're making donor calls, and everybody who really was 10 toes down for Bobby was like, I was with him until, I loved him until, Kim Iverson was the first one. And I was just on Kim Iverson's show the other day. Kim Iverson was the first one in true independent media. I truly believe Kim Iverson is actually indie. Down the middle, I truly believe that.
Oh, she is. No, she
Yeah.
is.
Kim's integrity is, to me, her journalistic integrity is unimpeachable from everything that I've seen. But she was the first one who has a platform that was like, Bobby, what the hell? And so inside the camp, there were two major Jewish people who had influence inside of the camp. One was Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, and the other one was the speechwriter Charles Eisenstein. Rabbi Shmuley, bro, we was like, why is this dude? The whole black team was like, why this dude here again, bro? We all love Charles Eisenstein. Charles Eisenstein, when Bobby did that, because to me, Charles Eisenstein was the angel on Bobby's shoulder. Now, these are two Jewish people, right? Yeah. These are two Jewish people. Charles Eisenstein is easily the more intelligent of the two, easily the more well-read and worldly wise, speaking spiritually evolved of the two. You have Eisenstein on squad because of how he puts his words together philosophically. We all who were sympathetic to Gaza, Palestine, was like, we don't outrank Charles. We don't outrank Charles. If Charles is saying this in his ear, there's none that I can do. I don't have any more power than Eisenstein. Right. But Boteach, Shmuley only really went away after his beef with Candace Owens. But every time I seen the dude, I wondered what his true motivations were. And I then began to see that there's something else afoot, and I can't quite figure out what that is.
What do you mean? You mean what, Rabbi Shmuley? He's a lunatic.
Brother,
he's an outright lunatic.
What I feel sad about is, and we all knew this, right? I mean, you can listen to his recorded conversations with Michael Jackson. Like, dude wasn't on the up and up, and he ain't been on the up and up for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then his beef with Candace Owens and how Candace eviscerated him on this issue. I'm sitting up here agreeing with Candace. I don't never agree with Candace Owens, man. Right. But I'm like, Candace is spitting. She's killing it right now. You know what I'm saying? Because she was just speaking about the logic of the hypocrisy. Right. And that's the only thing that got him out of the camp. But by that time, the damage had been done. And because, and this was right as 2023 was going into 2024, making the donor calls, people was like, I loved him until. Wow. The funding began to decrease, and this left him open to the eventual path of him being influenced by Donald Trump to join forces. Had he just given folks like you a bone, throw me a bone, Bobby. Just say, I want a ceasefire. I don't want nobody's kids dying. Just say, I can understand a world in which Russia sees NATO as the aggressor in a way that I can understand a world where Gaza sees Israel as the aggressor.
Yes.
Both technically attacked first, right? Russia technically attacked first. Hamas technically attacked first. There was, what you're saying is completely illogical. And had he just taken that stance, stood on business, when those university protests were bubbling up and all them kids were getting arrested, it should have been Bobby on them campuses, rallying the Gen Z vote. Right. That would have put him, he would have got so much money, donations, he would not have been able to be kept off the debate stage. They would not have been able to keep his commercials out because money still talks in this country. And that was the strategic error that left him open to the move he ended up making to end up in the position he is right now. Because had he done that, Trump wouldn't have been able to make that move in the first place.
Because he was close. I mean, from my understanding, the polling, when he became an independent, he was very close. Like he was maybe not necessarily at Ross Perot levels, but he had hit one or two of those polls that would allow, I mean, let's be honest, the polling is arbitrary, right? The numbers that they use are arbitrary. But he was close to getting on that debate stage.
He was polling at his highest, at his most popular, right, which was right after the independent announcement. Bobby's polling was touching 21, 22%.
Yeah.
Which was doing Ross Perot numbers. The capacity, the thing that was scary is that Bobby had the ability to perhaps get the 51% of voters that register as neither. And then Bobby, to his credit, did something very skillful. He took a Bernie Sanders talking point and made it right-leaning friendly. Instead of saying the 1% is ruining America, he called them crony capitalists. Started talking about BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. They're eating up the American dream, buying these homes. And I was writing policy about this. It really was, and I really truly believe his unwillingness, for whatever reason, to see the other side on Palestine and Gaza as the conflict began to get worse and worse and worse, caused both him and Kamala Harris the presidency, if you ask me.
Yes. Yes, by the way. I mean, you had millions of people who didn't show up to vote. And if you think about it, the Democratic Party depends on the Black vote and the youth vote in order to get elected.
Damn
And
right.
those kids that were protesting at those campuses, they were kids. And the people who looked at that and said, hey, you guys are murdering all these people.
Right.
How is the Democratic Party okay with this? And Democrats were like, we don't care. Not just we don't care. Well, Trump was just as bad, missing the point that it was Joe Biden that was paying 70 to 80% for genocide that was being committed, meaning they didn't seem to acknowledge or accept that regardless of, Satan could be on the other side. You're the one that do it. Right. I remember walking into a pharmacy and there was an older woman who was like, I can't do it. I can't back him for this. Meaning these were just random people who you would run into who's like, I can't accept that.
Do it.
Millions of people just didn't show up because they weren't going to vote for Trump, but they also weren't going to vote for Democrats. It's astonishing. So yeah, he paid a cost for it. I didn't, for the life of me, it seemed so contradictory to me. What do you think it was? I mean, was there anything visible in the campaign where you could see, okay, these, for example, Thomas Massey made the point of saying that every Republican, or pretty much Democrats too, have Israeli minders, or people who, let's say, work for like AIPAC, have minders for each of the Congress members to ensure that they vote a particular way. You have Matt Gaetz, who apparently just did a video saying, well, you can't really get elected if you are not towing a certain line. What were the hooks that were in it? Was it just because he made the faux pas earlier about the Ashkenazi Jews not getting COVID or something that?
I think so. Let's look at the timeline, brother, because I had every suspicion that Shmuley was the guy who was that handler. And here's how Shmuley gets involved.
Interesting.
The thing, it wasn't just that Ashkenazi Jews statement that he made that was completely wild. It was also the fact that when he was first asked about the issue, he advocated a two-state solution. Those two combinations ended up having him sit down on Shmuley Boteach's show. And a buddy of mine was watching that. I wasn't able to go live. And he says, something ain't right with this, bro. Shmuley seemed to be that person. And here's how the universe is doing this. We're going to take it to high level now. We're going to go up there to the bird's eye view.
Yeah.
We're entering a time where unjust power is under review because it is still against reality as reality stands. You can manipulate, coerce, blackmail, but it does not stop the actual facts on the ground.
Right.
And the actual facts on the ground were being broadcast in high definition via smartphones to the young people. You couldn't deny it.
Social media.
Everyone with a heart can say what happened on October 7th was atrocious. And by the same measure that this was atrocious, unjust, and barbaric, this is 50 times that.
Yeah.
By the same measure. You cannot use George W. Bush logic in order to somehow morally justify Israel's actions when George Bush's logic was completely off. And no matter who you have in a politician's ear, in time, those facts will assert themselves against their influence. And they ended up being exposed were the controllers that they always were. And I said, Bobby, man, these folks might be able to keep a little money in your pocket, but they can't get no votes in your pocket.
Right.
This is bigger than the control. But here's what I haven't been able to reconcile this, brother, if I'm going to be transparent. On one hand, I've laid out a narrative that said that Bobby was being influenced by Shmuley. But when I talked to Bobby one-on-one, he was the most rhetorically capable Zionist I had ever seen.
Really? Oh, so
The
he was
man, it seemed like, right? So I feel like perhaps Shmuley influenced that rhetorical capability with talking points. But I'm going to drop a man's name that I was advocating for him to debate. The only one that I knew who had the rhetorical capability to combat him on the other side. That's our brother, Max Blumenthal.
Oh, Max, yeah. Max,
I said,
left and right, yeah.
Bro, I was like, look, they were avoiding Max like the plague. He was freaking Terrence Crawford in the boxing game. Nobody wanted to smoke with him, right? And I was like, there would be such benefit. I was working behind the scenes. Now the campaign knows. Yes, I reached out to Max Blumenthal. I tried to set it up. I tried to arrange it because I knew two things could happen. Number one, his own talking points could be exposed in real time. And number two, it would show a measure of good faith that they're true independents who wanted real dialogue on a high level. Because that debate did not happen, and they would not allow Max Blumenthal within 100 feet of the man when it came to, debating or anything. I mean, they was at events looking out for Max Blumenthal. Then he lost that opportunity. And I knew the inevitable was going to come.
But is he one of those people, like, for example, there's some people who can come in contact with additional information or come in contact with something and say, okay, fair enough, I'm wrong. Is he that guy? I mean, like, I don't know. You know him better.
He is on some issues, bro. Yeah, like, and he touted this, and this fact gave him some hope, right? Gave us some hope. Bobby changed his stance on the border.
Mm-hmm.
At first, his stance was like, "Oh, any border control is racist," and historically, there definitely are roots in racism. But this current border control situation was wild. Like the way in which people were coming across the southern border, and how there was human trafficking involved, how there was a real drug thing involved, how there was like not only people from Latin America, but like all over the world coming from Africa, China, the Middle East. Okay, now we have to figure this out, right? So it seemed like, wow, somebody could talk to Bobby and get him to see logic in that. I still do not know the mechanisms by which he changed his mind on that. It wasn't raw logic. Because raw logic was being used by myself, by Eisenstein, and everybody in his camp who was largely pro ceasefire. And it didn't work. It's still a mystery to me, bro.
What is your sense of him? I mean, he came up when he first came out. Oftentimes, when he was talking about the campaign, he would talk about it through the lens of his father and his uncle.
Right.
It was compelling, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's invoking this kind of Kennedy-esque thing when he's talking about that stuff. And of course, if you're somebody who lived through the Kennedy assassination, or if you lived through that,
right,
that's a compelling point of view, which is, again, part of the reason why I think the Democrats worked so hard to get rid of him. Like
they were scared of him.
Yeah, they were terrified of him, right? They thought he has a chance. He can upset the apple cart. He can, if he gets through a primary process, Joe Biden is toast, especially since Joe Biden is out of his mind. That is a really compelling argument to make. I mean, like, how did he really think of himself in that context? Like, of a continuation of this line, and even from the standpoint of his dad, or for that matter, from the standpoint of his uncle?
Man, on one hand, Robert Kennedy Jr. is absolutely the inheritor of the moral weight and the capabilities of those who came before him. And on the other hand, he's a boy that lost out on some major things because he lost his father.
Yeah.
And everybody who loves Bobby can't help but see the boy who lost his father. Everybody, myself included, right? I have seen him be a very integrity-filled man. I never got the idea, at least dealing with him personally, that any of his stances worked from an earnest place. Even the Israel stance,
Yeah.
like for real, seemed to be an earnest stance on what he believed was the crisis that Jewish people are facing and how they needed to defeat Hamas the way they were defeating. It all seemed earnest. What I'm not quite sure of is his ability to withstand certain moral pressures when it comes to his livelihood, when it comes to those who may be able to get under his thumbscrew financially or relationally, perhaps with his wife. If he feels that's under threat, he will not do anything to threaten his relationship with his wife. That is 100% true.
Sure.
And Cheryl has the most clout. So she's got the most sway. His queen is indispensable. And so there's
I can accept that, bro. Like,
right.
look, I would tell you when I was married, you trust your wife. I mean, all things being equal,
Right.
If ideally you should. I mean,
Right.
it's your wife, right? That's the person who you tell stuff to. That's the person who backs you, supports you, who's supposed to have your back. So I do get that.
Right. But
yeah.
but if that is off, if any of those factors are off, I don't know if he can self-correct.
I see.
If she's off and she's saying some stuff in his ear that is off when it comes to like political calculus or just general morality or how most of the people feel who would give him the vote, I don't know if he can correct that.
I see.
So those who have the most pull on his relational heartstrings are the one you are actually seeing through his behavior and choices. And that, and I don't know if he's got what it takes, if they're wrong, to correct them and make them go the way that he knows needs to happen. I don't know.
We got to get to Trump.
Yeah,
because that was a hell of a turn, right? I think I understand why he went that route, especially considering I want the JFK files released. I think it was a CIA operation. I want those files released. So I get that, right? Like you said, a boy who lost his father and his uncle who want to see what is in those documents. That's one sense. In the other sense, the vaccine thing, healthy human services. So again, that makes sense in the context of we want to make America healthy again. We want to get stuff out of our foods.
Baby. Right.
I supported that.
Right.
So he is at the core of it. I think he's right. When he is pointing out, like I give an example in Europe, they would have all of these things. They don't allow our chickens, our pigs, our beef. There's all sorts of stuff that we have in our foods that they just don't allow here because they consider them cancer causing. And you think of, as he points out, look at all the childhood illnesses, look at all the stuff that these kids are dealing with. That's not something that's happening in other countries. Why is it happening here? He has a point, right? But it is a hell of a turn to go from I'm a Kennedy who functionally built the Democratic Party in the way that we know it. Maybe FDR, but Kennedy is a close second, if not number one.
For sure.
Yeah, and then to turn around and say, I'm going with Trump. That's a whiplash. And by the way, a weapon for Trump. Like it wasn't minor, right? He was a clear weapon for him. Like, meaning that he still was able to get right much support. And he was able to bring that support, I would argue, within the Trump campaign. He was a benefit to Trump in this
Bobby
case.
put him over the top numerically. Bobby put Trump over the top. And I think that Trump knew that. Trump, if anything, has a deep sense of popularity and what the crowd wants. He's a carnival barker, bro. But he's a fascist carnival barker.
Right.
And he is the epitome of a demagogue. And I knew that we would be in a world of chaos had he won. And a part of why I was advising Bobby to stay his butt in the race is to take them votes away from Trump, at the very least, because I knew that if, back against the wall, you got to make a choice. You want Kamala Harris's America, or do you want Trump's America? Back against the wall. This is not my ideal America. This is not the one that's most highly aligned with my spiritual purpose in the planet, but back against the wall. You got to choose. Kamala, back against the wall. Got to choose. I saw this, and anybody who had half a brain could see. No, dude, the way Project 2025 is lining up and who he got behind him, they mean business, bro.
What was the conversation in the campaign when this came up? Because I would imagine the people in this campaign, like, for example, this, what you're saying right now, I don't have that perspective, but fair enough. I accept that perspective that you have it.
Right.
And if you have it, I would imagine the other people in the campaign also had it. Like, dude, this is a bad idea. What were they? Did a conversation take place?
Man, did it
came up?
Bro, that was heartbreaking.
Really?
Because my idea is that the captain goes down with the ship. I said this on Kim Iverson. I'm gonna say it right now. The captain goes down with the ship, and he does not care which vessel the prevailing waves may favor when it sinks. You don't care. You done got us, and so look here. Trump has an understanding of power. He can make you bend the knee.
Right.
I mean, he is adult Joffrey Baratheon, man. He know about that power, right? Like, you feel me? Like, and so he understand, and I'm like, Bobby, you will get what you want, but what you want ain't what you think, right? I knew ultimately that Trump had a very good chance of winning when I saw that picture of them shaking hands and the fireworks behind them. And I don't know if it's fireworks, but it was ribbons. I mean, it was looking like, man, you know what I'm saying? It looked like Republican Compton and Long Beach together. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but if there was a fiasco, Bobby's painted in that. If there's unpopularity, Bobby's painting in that. If they think Trump's a fascist, Bobby's painting in that now. Let's say he does do some good stuff. It looked like Bobby has influenced Trump to lower the prices of drugs. That's cool, right? But in the midst of the chaos of the tariffs and the ICE raids and the taking away the funding for like the Black Smithsonian stuff and the anti-D,
right? Destroying Social Security, destroying Medicaid.
Bobby's now painted in that. And it don't matter because when he opens his mouth, the people only hear Trump. And I said, Bobby, you done took Children's Health Defense Fund. You have given it so much more wind, so much more emails and resumes. You have forged Thor's hammer, bro. You can wield this thing in many, many ways. But if Bobby had gone down with the ship and Trump has still won, he's not painting it in all this BS that Trump is doing.
Right.
And Bobby goes down with the ship. He's like, I came in independent. I'm going out independent, went down valiantly. And I forged with my campaign now the Children's Health Defense Fund into the hammer of Thor. And you can only wield the hammer of Thor if you are worthy. And it seemed to me that he bent the knee. And now, no matter what he does from that standpoint, he's painted in whatever chaos that Trump has to offer.
So just be clear, though, there was no conversation about it. He just did it.
There was. So, oh my God, bro. So here's, when I first heard it, bro, I was like, hell no. He ain't never gonna join him, bro. I'm supporting an alpha ass dude. He a Kennedy. I was like, Bobby got that Kennedy pride. He got the Kennedy ego. He ain't never gonna bend the knee. Come on, man. Think about all he's done. He's got the heart to stand up against being called an anti-vaxxer and stand on business. I have all these rationales for why Bobby would never do it.
And he did it.
And then people were on my, because like, so then I made the choice to be public facing rather than just go behind the scenes. Like I made a couple of videos at first, but then I really became public facing because I was like, yo, backs against the wall. Bobby needs everything. I have a platform on influencer. Let me go influence on behalf of Bobby. So I knew if something bad happened, I got egg on my face too. So I was like, dog, you don't know what I got on the line here, bro. And I had to make a video. I said, Bobby, I can't join you in this endorsement.
Oh, wow.
I made a video that a lot of people within Bobby's camp are still like, bro, you betrayed Bobby. And I'm like, did I? Or did this move betray the independent movement?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
It hurt to make that video too.
Bro, it hurt, bro. But it was like, so I had already felt like I had compromised too much. Because my stance on Gaza and just ending the genocide, just taking a different route if you have to route out Hamas's military wing, and me still staying in the campaign was already a huge compromise. The only way I slept with it at night is I said, I ain't gonna shut up about it. You're gonna hear from me regardless, and I'm not gonna shut up on my page about it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You're not gonna buy me off just because this campaign's paying my bills.
Right.
But at that point, after I have been public facing and I believed in the independent movement, I gotta make a message. Have this registered throughout history. I will not follow you into the Trump camp because I know what's coming. Wow. And I was right. And one of the things I said before you go on, brother, I said, never let a con man blind you with your own light. He will only pull you into darkness. And I knew that he was baiting Bobby with, Bobby, don't you want to help the kids? You've been fighting for this all your life. Don't you want to go ahead and really make an impact? If I win, then you get to do this. Well, yeah. But does it really matter if you're firing people left and right because that's what Doge wants? You see what I'm saying?
So Trump made a pitch for him. Like he actively was working behind the scenes trying to get him to come onto the campaign saying, look, I'll give you this. I give you this. You can do this. This is what's going to happen if I win. Like
well,
he made the pitch.
Well, not quite. Here's what really happened. The assassination.
Oh, when he got shot. I mean, when Trump got shot.
When Trump got shot, you know that's going to affect the Kennedy like nobody else. When Trump gets shot.
Interesting.
When Trump gets shot, you know that somebody who has suffered the trauma that Bobby has suffered, he can't not reach out, man. He can't not reach out. Trump takes the bullet through the ear. A lot of people like supposedly, but we'll go with that. Trump takes the bullet through the ear. And Bobby reaches out like, man, this stuff got too real out here, man. And there was a window in time where it looked like, and people, if you go back to the news reports at the time, people were asking this. So is Trump going to soften his tone? Is he going to like stop being a jerk? Will this be his wake-up call? And in that window, that's when their relationship was forged, because there's no way Robert could not see a piece of what happened to his father and uncle and what they tried to do to Trump. Nothing like that. And Trump reeled them in, bro, reeled them in.
So that was the connecting point. Basically, it put him in mind of his uncle and his dad.
There's no way it couldn't, dude. Look at it. There's no way it couldn't. I mean, that guy, I mean, come on, bro. I mean, to the world, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., John F. Kennedy Sr. are historical events. To him, is kitchen tables at Christmas, seats empty. That's his family, bro. So there's no way that couldn't hit that trigger, and Bobby at least had to reach out and start looking. And by the way, I believe that if I have the timeline correct, Kamala had just stepped in, and she had this glow, took all the wind out of anything. At this point, we knew getting a black vote was off the table. So there's that combination of factors. Opened the door, and Trump put that hook in. And now Bobby's like, y'all block me out? I'm like, goddamn Kennedy. And you won't let me on left-leaning Democratic media? You done got me painted all kind of ways. At this point, how can you tell this man holding two hot coals which one is colder? He got to go to a point where he feels loved, accepted, and heard. But Trump is a master manipulator. And I tried to warn him about it. And here we are.
But some people would say he did it for political power. that, some people will make the argument, okay, do you want to lose in its entirety, or do you want to win and be able to influence power in some way? Now,
That's
the
a
catch becomes, are you going to be able to influence power in this
right.
case? Meaning
That's a
being
logical argument. It is 100% a logical argument. 100% a logical argument. There's no way that anybody who's just a general chess player can't see the chess mastery in that, but you have to see it from a higher level. Energetically and historically, we are at a time period where fascism is rising, and you have deeply held democratic ideals. If achieving that power means that you align yourself with fascism, did you really achieve that power?
right.
My
And are you
argument
going
is
to have
no.
the influence that you think you're going to have?
You
I
really
mean, the
think
health
you're
human
going to
services.
that's what I'm saying. You think you're going to
Yeah,
influence Trump more than the
yeah,
people who go Project 2025, bro? You think you got more influence over him than Peter Thiel and Elon Musk? You think? I doubt it.
yeah. They stick you in health and human services. You have no influence on the events meaning he was talking about foreign policy. Well, you're not going to be dealing with foreign policy in health and
No,
human services. I mean, they've locked you into a box in this case.
period.
Wow, that is fascinating. I mean, I've gone through my list of questions.
Right.
I'm fascinated by this. What? And one last thing, the independent media front.
Mm,
How do you see it now? Do you still see it where there's a bias
yeah.
towards right-wing independent
Yeah.
media, or I guess if it's leaning a particular way? But well, that's not fair. That's not fair. I lean to the right. I mean, I lean to the left, but
Mm.
I'm not affiliated with either political
Right.
party. In
I
fact,
lean
I
to
don't
the
like
left
either
too.
political party.
I lean to
Um,
the left too. But if you look at just the viewer count and subscriber count of, let's say, the Young Turks on the left versus Joe Rogan on the right, or at least coded right.
But see, Joe Rogan is not really on the right.
Right.
Joe Rogan was a party
No.
bro.
Well, I mean, but look, is his audience, like, he as a man is one thing. Is the coding of his audience further left or further right? He wasn't. He was definitely liberal than a mug before the COVID era. But when Joe Rogan platformed these doctors who were giving a counter narrative to what left-leaning media wanted us to see, then that attracted an audience. Well, this stuff, all kind of stuff happened where now he's coded right. But if you look at the people who are coded right, let's say coded right, not complete Fox News talking head flunkies. These are not people who are just like all the way, MAGA, but those who are coded right versus coded left. There is man, they are far outnumbered in the independent space on the right than on the left, those who are coded that way. And so I just, and that not saying that ain't really what the will of the people is. But when you look at who really trusts the media more, the left trusts the media more.
Yes.
And the right, you see what I'm saying? So it's like, that's why that space looks like that.
Interesting. Wow, this is fascinating. I was so curious about what was going on in that campaign, and for the longest time it was like, I thought he had a window of a chance.
Oh, he did,
and they did everything in their power, like from the standpoint of the Democratic Party. Meaning, he tried to go through the party,
right,
and he was stopped at every turn. They wouldn't even have a primary. Then they all of a sudden chose Kamala Harris.
Come on now.
Yeah.
That was cap too. Like, that was cap too. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Theo Wilson. Thank you, man. I appreciate this. I this has been illuminating. Put it mildly. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Because he was an interesting candidate and he was competent. Like, and I know I keep saying competent, but Joe Biden was out of his mind. He was
Trump is dumb. So one person crazy, one person dumb. You got somebody who could string sentences together, and suddenly Bobby sound like, you know what I'm saying, FDR himself sometime, right?
Yeah. By the way, do you think he was further to the left or to the right in his own being, not the way he was
in his own being? He was further to the left initially. COVID really rearranged a lot of what's left and right. That's how I got caught up, because I thought that my stance against mandating vaccines for Black folks who have been medically experimented on, at least until we get some more stuff, I thought that was a left-leaning stance. I thought that was fight the power, standing up for the little guy. I thought not mandating people choose jab or your job is pro-labor, which is generally a pro-left thing. So the tribes got drawn super weird during COVID, and now you could make the case that he's more right, but in his heart of hearts, I believe the man, at least deeply, was far more left than right.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, some of the stance he was taking were lefty, especially on foreign policy. And then
and the economy too. A lot of Bernie Sanders stuff, he really branded his own. I thought that was very interesting. I was trying to tell people, like, yo, this is what he says about these big mega corporations buying up houses.
Or drug companies.
I mean, like drug companies
going after corporations. Oh, that's a lefty thing, right? Lefties inherently distrust like these kind of power, like centers and stuff like that.
Right.
And so he did seem to have that, and so yeah, he was an interesting candidate. He really was.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you for this, man.
No problem, bro.
RFK Jr.'s, I would say, advisor to African American affairs. I would say just advisor in general at this point. What are you doing now, by the way, where people can find you?
Man, just on Instagram, Theo EJ Wilson. I'm on TikTok at Spitfire Speaking, and I'm working on a few environmental projects now, and back into filmmaking. So
are you?
Yeah, I've been an actor. I got a show on the History Channel called I Was There, and yeah, that's got some TED Talks out there as well. So just look me up, Theo EJ Wilson, Theo Wilson. Either way, I'll let your boy.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate this.
No problem.
You be safe. Have a good one. All right. Interesting interview. Interesting. Look, guys, I've been super curious about RFK Jr. As I told you in the very beginning, I was very interested. But as Theo pointed out, the Israel thing was a deal breaker, just like it was a deal breaker in regards to Democrats, Republicans, and everything else, which is why I was arguing against the Democratic Party on that issue, because genocide should be a red line. I don't care who's on the other side. This argument of building one concentration camp less seems just bizarre to me. So, but I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I know we're at a weird time because typically I go in the morning, but I hope you enjoyed it. Judge Saxon, yeah, I know. Napolitano and everybody else was pretty much on at the exact same time. Fair enough. But the video will be up. People can watch it after the fact. I'm going to tell you, you guys have a good evening. And I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Shmuley Thomas Morning Show. Signing off. Oh, by the way, I hope this gave some context to what was going on behind the scenes. Because, I didn't quite know myself of what the hell was going on with the campaign. It's nice to have somebody, though, who can explain that stuff, who's there, who's close to him, who can give context to this kind of truth behind the scenes of the person and the man himself. So you guys have a good one. Yeah, I was baffled also, Samir Phillips. Same here. I was baffled by it. It didn't make sense to me. I thought it was a contradiction in terms. Like, he would be so eloquent when he would explain the Ukraine thing. And I was like, it was a breath of fresh air, right? You have all of this propaganda that was out about it. And you finally had somebody who explained it honestly. And you're like, thank God somebody can explain this and talk about this in a way that makes sense, where you're actually taking into account the other perspective of, hey, maybe, expanding NATO to the border of Russia is a red line. Maybe we wouldn't be comfortable with that either if that was happening to us. And so, yeah, it was a contradiction. It was strange. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. You can support the content, PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, buy me a coffee, all of those things at this point. And I will see you guys bright and early in the morning. Signing off. Have a good one all. Be safe.